Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny White.
How are you?
Good. How about you?
I am okay. I mean, we had some rain.
Yeah. Well, we had 7 inches in my house.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? 7 inches?
Yep, exactly 7 inches.
Well, that's a little bit of rain. Where did all that rain go?
Oh, the city collects all that and gets it and then charges me for it. I can't even collect my own water, so you know how that goes.
You in Edmond, you're not allowed to have water barrels?
Well, it's like I mean, you can collect what comes off your house, but you can't collect, what's in your yard.
Like you can't put in a well, you mean?
No, I could put in a well, but you can't collect like runoff water,
Really?
Yeah, you couldn't put like a drainage system in to collect all the runoff water in your yard. You can only collect what comes off your house.
Okay, that's very odd.
Yeah, I've looked into all those deals. I've seen places like where they put in car washes, and the car washes, have a whole filter system that collects all the water, and
Yeah.
then the city finds out. I'm not saying it happened necessarily in Edmond, but at some point the city or someone finds out and they sue them for the water, the
No
water right.
way.
Oh yeah, it's
God,
insane.
we don't live in an authoritarian world, do we?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just stupid. Well, you had something you wanted to talk about this morning while we're waiting on Julianne.
Yeah, last week, real quick, I'll hit this quick because I know we want to talk about a couple other things. Last week, I was just talking about, we should all be so happy and excited because how much money's out there and 401ks and IRAs and stock markets. Now stock market's going back up. You have all this stuff. So I'm not going to talk necessarily so much about the stock market. But what I do want to show is, and I've showed this in the past, this is the U.S. debt clock. Okay, so this just kind of shows how much, where the debt is, where the money is, income, the federal revenues. It's got all kinds of money in there. But what I really
get hypnotized by as fast as those numbers are moving.
Yeah. What I want you to see, okay, so the very top left box, that's the national debt. That's what they always talk about. That's not the issue. The issue here that I want to show is come down.
Okay.
Come down a box. Can you see my mouse on the screen?
No. Okay. It doesn't show up.
So just come down to the next box below where all the red is.
Yeah.
And then the next box down says money creation or whatever. So it's kind of in the middle of the screen. There's a black box with right in the middle that says currency and debt derivatives.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, see that?
Yeah.
That's $630 trillion.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of
So
for
we talked
the
about
when you
derivatives before. Derivative is just a paper contract of an underlying asset. Yeah.
holy
See, you see,
cow.
see where I'm talking about? 630
No, I
trillion
do. It's
in
right. It's kind of right
derivatives.
in the middle down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Looks like
So
it has a
so
bow
one
tie in the
thing,
corner.
yeah, a little bow tie in the corner. So 630 trillion in derivatives. Now that's paper contracts that a bank has on underlying assets. There's not even close to that many assets even in the world. This is how fake all this is. Well, in order to propagate, to
Yowza.
maintain that big number, they have to keep inflating all those assets. Well, it's tied to the debt market, which is, the bond market, and it's tied to the
Yeah.
stock market, the equity market. So they have to keep making those numbers go up, because if you have a collapse in the derivative side of things, which I'll show you next, is let me change this and let me go to one more thing here. So if you have a collapse in the derivative side, which that's coming also, but this is the Congressional Budget Office or the Comptroller. This is their derivative report. Okay, so every quarter they do a derivative report to show the banks that have these massive positions in derivatives. Well, if you look right here, so we look at, let's say, the biggest bank with derivatives. Now this number, this derivative number here, that says 55 million, or this is in millions. So that's $55 billion or trillion. Sorry, that's $55 trillion at one bank. And if you look at the first column here, they've only got,
Yeah, the
$500 billion
derivatives way
in
out.
assets.
Yeah.
Okay. So same thing. Here's JP Morgan. So JP Morgan's got $3 trillion in assets, but they've got $50 trillion in derivatives. And let's just remember, if you take just seconds in time, so a million seconds is like 11 or 12 days. A billion seconds is like 31 years. A trillion seconds is like 31,000 years. So we're talking about $630 trillion in this fake derivative everything. I mean, it is completely unbelievable. People have no idea. They look, oh, the national debt's 35 trillion. That's nothing compared to the derivative side of all this stuff. And I mean, it's completely fake. And just so people know, when we really start having so everyone was melting down over what they thought was a stock market correction, last week or so, which was
Clearly
nothing.
that was not.
Yeah. I mean, we were up almost 27, 28% in 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
And we pulled back 5% just to now
Yeah.
we're already almost back up to those levels. But anyway, the real issue is going to be, if you want to watch something, you watch the 10-year yield or the 10-year bond. So the 10-year bond is, roughly, it's just under 4% or right around 4% right now. Well, when that 10-year starts going like 4.5, 5, 6, 7, kind of out of control, it starts selling off. That means all these other countries, all these other people, they're cashing in on our debt. They're cashing in their treasuries or, the bonds that they bought in order to just get cash to get out of our system. So that's what's really going to crash stock market. So we're not going to have any crash until on the debt side in the bond market, you have that 10-year just absolutely go insane.
Joy, thanks for some great. Thank you.
But at some point, these numbers are so astronomical. These numbers here. I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
They look
banks.
like my house insurance.
Yeah, you've got 4 banks here with like 100 or like $175 trillion just in these 4 banks.
Yeah.
And you can scroll down here. There, all these banks.
Well, I just noticed that the first couple were our favorite globalists.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we're in a fiat system that's completely manufactured in every capacity. And we love our way of life, but it's been produced through a money system that is completely fake.
Yeah. Yes, they did that when they took us off the gold standard for sure.
Yeah.
So Julianne is waiting in the wings, but I want to mention something really fast before we get on with Julianne. We have a very contentious race that's going on here, kind of in my neck of the woods, and I wanted to bring it to everybody attention. Oh, well, And that's true. Don't start any wars over that, do we, Ryan?
Well, what I say, Jenny, the only way all those wars exist is because of the fake money, because no one's going to pay real money, real gold, silver, things like that to go to war. No one.
Yeah. And we could go on about Goldman Sachs. Anyway, so in our district, we are having and it's my next door district. Kevin Wallace, who is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, is up for re-election this year. And it has been quite the contentious campaign with a newcomer, Jim Shaw, coming in. And Kevin Wallace has called him a liar. I mean, he's called him, disingenuous was the nicest thing he's called him. Shaw campaign put something out here just today, I think, that is quite interesting. And I do want to take just a few seconds here to remind people, the people who have been in office, especially those as long as Kevin Wallace would serve his last term this year, or start serving his last term this year. So he's been in, they can only serve 12 years. So he's been in 10 as it is. So he has a record of what he's actually done while he's been in here. So if you look at this, and that this is their page, Kevin's record speaks for itself. So everybody knows, I think at this point, so many of you know about humanure and about what's happening in the country. Certainly around where I live, they're dumping human waste on farmland as fertilizer. Well, somebody just pointed out to me the other day that the company called Synagro, which is the one that spreads all the humanure all over the land, which then has chemicals and bacteria and prescription drugs and all this stuff, which just percolates right through the soil and down into our water supply. This company, Synagro, is owned by a Chinese company. And I found it very interesting that apparently they did some research and found out that Kevin Wallace killed the bill that would prevent foreign ownership of private land. So I don't know how many of you know this, but when we legalized marijuana, we did not do any kind of our due diligence. The House didn't, or our legislature didn't do any kind of due diligence. And we just had the Wild West with marijuana out here. And one of the things that happened is that Chinese would come over from China directly here, nationalist Chinese, and work on these marijuana farms, and they were buying property outright. So we had Chinese nationalists actually buying American soil. And there was a bill that many of us asked for because this was really becoming a problem. And it was run, and apparently Kevin Wallace nixed that bill. But then he's also admitted to using human sludge all over his property. And so that's kind of a really interesting situation there that I thought I wanted to bring up. We will be having Jim Shaw on our program on Friday, the 23rd, to kind of talk about a lot of this and what's going on with Kevin Wallace and what he said that isn't really accurate at all. And so we are going to address that on the 23rd. I do hope you'll tune in for that. This is a very important election, HD 32. So please get involved if you can. And I just feel like if we don't get Julianne on here, she always has so much to say. We don't want to deprive her of any moments that she can be speaking. So I'm going to bring her on here. Good morning, Julianne.
Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Michael.
I've missed you.
To see you. I know. It's been so long, it seems.
I know. And you're always so fun to talk to. So thank you for being here today. I'm so excited.
You're welcome. I am too.
Did you have a good summer?
Yes. It was short and long. So it feels like it could just be, it feels like I should have another month, but I was ready for a little break also.
Yeah.
Summers are intense.
Yes. Well, you have 4 boys, all under 12.
Well, I've got now they just had birthdays. I have 3 that have July birthdays.
Oh my goodness.
So July is a nutso month at our house. So I have 3 boys and I have 1 daughter, and they
Okay.
range in age from 6 to 13 now. So,
I
you
was
know,
close.
yeah. So so they all have different and competing interests, and they all have big personalities. So, by a couple weeks into the summer, I'm just like, oh, how did I help create these human beings that are driving me crazy?
I feel sorry for your poor daughter at the bottom of all those boys.
She's tough. She's the toughest one.
She would have to be. That kid's going to grow up and rule the world right there.
Yeah, I
I
think
got
so.
dogpiled by a bunch of brothers.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you have some stuff that we were going to talk about that I think is very important. And I'm hoping we'll get some more people tuning in here in just a minute. And I appreciate those of you who are on right now. But this is such an important topic. And I think people don't either know about it, or maybe they know and they just think it's great. I don't know. But let's talk about economic development today. What is economic development?
That is the $1,000,000 question, because that is what the reset is all about. It's what globalism is all about. And it's going to be the end of freedom in this country.
Stop. Are you just driving? Are you being insane about this? Because we are told by the Chamber of Commerce every single day, Julianne, and they pump people in to get filled with the legislature. They do PACs and all this stuff to make sure that people have jobs. I thought economic development was just about jobs.
Jobs. We have to be ready for the future. We have to have a workforce that's prepared to serve the needs of business and industry, because business and industry are going to be our salvation, right? That's what we hear all the time, but it is a ruse. And what economic development really is the program of sustainable development. So when you're talking to conservatives, they don't like the word sustainable because they think of the green agenda. And so you have to have another term substituted in there to make it palatable to people who believe that they are going to benefit from a free market economy and capitalism and all this. So we have lots of conservatives and Republicans that, and the Chamber of Commerce, as you say, is the worst, source of all of this misinformation. But you have these groups that are saying we have to have economic development, or else our cities, our towns, our rural areas are just going to collapse in on themselves. So there's a lot of fear mongering and propaganda that tells the people that you have to follow the model of economic development if you want to survive. What they don't tell the people is that economic development is sustainable development, and that is a measured and managed economy. It's managed from the top down, and it's managed by the bankers that Michael mentioned, who are creating all sorts of fake money and funding wars through this, and limiting the freedom of the average citizen. So, when you and I, Jenny, had talked about, some of the small towns in Oklahoma and what they're doing with tourism and downtown revitalization efforts, it fits exactly into this model of economic development. And what it is it's a plan to roll out the New World Order, the globalist agenda, in these small towns that are really against that agenda. And they think that they're supporting politicians who are going to protect them and their interests against the globalist agenda, but they're falling right into it when they sign on to these programs of revitalization and tourism, whether it's ecotourism or attraction-based tourism.
Now, okay,
So
so I know of a couple of things like that, but could you talk a little bit about what is that attraction-based tourism? What is this about?
sure. Well, it's really a branding effort. So you have lots of small towns that have difficulty bringing new people and new money into the town. And like you say, economic development is it's sold in the on the basis of job creation. And so tourism is a great way to bring in new jobs, or so the argument goes. And so you have all sorts of little towns all over Oklahoma. Chickasha is one. Catoosa is one with their blue whale. Chickasha has the famous or infamous leg lamp from the movie A Christmas Story that is something like 50 feet tall, and it's right, in downtown. And they're these quirky little things that are supposed to attract, visitors each year who are going to bring in their tourism dollars and save the town. And because we're going to have all of these new visitors, then we're going to have to build up industries to support, their entrance into our city. And that's how it's sold. Like, this is going to be a lifeline for small town America to have these strange little attractions pop up.
Doodads.
Doodad. Oh, yeah. Like,
well, that leg lamp
yeah.
is obnoxious. The interesting thing about Chickasha is, I mean, if you look at Chickasha, what do you think of when you think of Chickasha? You think of Christmas, Christ Mass, Christmas, because they have that huge Christmas display. My gosh, we've taken the kids down there, at Christmas time, numerous times to see all the lights and the angels and the part of, Christmas. And now you've got this leg lamp, which represents either a stripper or a prostitute. Mm-hmm. So how does that fit in with Christmas Town, I wonder?
Well, it's certainly not a very modest display, It doesn't reflect any of the humility of the nativity scene, for sure.
No, or the values of the town. It was just the weirdest thing. And as a matter of fact, that particular thing was the thing that made me want you to come on and talk, because it has seemed to me, and with some information I've gotten from numerous sources from across Oklahoma, that this isn't just economic development. Oh, we're going to, like you said, we're going to bring people to the town. And guess what? If we have more people, then, you can open a restaurant because the people are going to come to gawk at this leg lamp. So they'll surely want to have a hamburger, create a new restaurant. And that's kind of, what we think. I'm like Kamala Harris, I'm talking with my hands. I need to stop that right now.
I have to sit on mine.
The economic, the theory. That's the economic theory. The never mind. Anyway,
don't forget to laugh, Jenny.
This is why I miss you guys.
We have to stick something else in there. But it seems to me that it's not, there are two prongs to this, and see if you can set me straight. So there are two prongs to this. One of them is, we're going to use this economic development, this thing, to kind of control the population. You need to kind of develop that a little bit for me too. But then the other thing is, we're going to use this to benefit ourselves. We're going to create businesses. We're going to create TIF districts. We're going to create, all of these things that are going to benefit the people who have the money to come in, or the connections to come in and do these things. I mean, set me straight here.
No, I think that that's exactly right. I mean, the propaganda is it's sold to the people in terms of their future prosperity. And, people are hurting right now. They have been since, well, we could go back a long time, but certainly since 2008. And then, in 2020 with all of the forced lockdowns and bringing the American economy to a grinding halt. We're going to see effects of that for decades to come if we even recover from it. So you have a people who want opportunities to better their lives and to become independent and to take care of their families. And so when the promise of jobs and economic growth is held out to them, they're excited and they're desperate to sign on to these initiatives. And they're busy doing their own thing and scrapping to make ends meet, so they don't have the time to look at all the white papers and the impact analyses and see how the numbers really work. They just trust their business leaders and they trust, the Chamber of Commerce, I think, for the most part. I mean,
and their city councils, because that's
yeah,
another, where all of this stuff comes through or they don't go to their city council meetings, so they don't know what's going on.
yeah. So, you have a public that's desperate for a solution and that is generally trusting of their neighbors, right? Especially in small towns, I think, because you do interact with your city councilors more frequently. These people, and so there's a gullibility and a naivete among the populace, and that is going to lead to the populace being controlled. So that's the first prong that you mentioned. And then, the kickbacks, that is another huge area of concern for anyone who thinks that freedom is worth having, because we see that it takes money to build these doodads, right? And if you're working within a limited municipal budget or even a regional budget, you have to, a lot of times the money isn't there, so you have to seek outside sources, especially private investors. And so what happens? You have municipalities partnering with private sector organizations that are going to they're going to pay the upfront costs. And there are always strings attached whenever money is changed. And so those stakeholders that participate in the public private partnership on the private side, they're going to have an outsized say in the character of the development that occurs. So with the leg lamp, I don't know how that discussion came about. I don't know who first raised the idea of bringing a leg lamp to Chickasha. I mean, and I would have to go back and sort of look at the history of the place a little bit more closely and see, how long they had this Christmas festival. What were the mores like in Chickasha? But I mean, your audience, if they've seen me talk before, they know that I believe that this really is a satanic program that we're dealing with. I focus on the economy, but there are dark satanic forces behind it. And so what is the modus operandi of dark satanic forces? Is to take something that's very similar to something good and then tweak it just a bit or corrupt it. So if you have a community that loves Christmas and the real reason for Christmas, which is the coming of our Savior to save us from our sins, what better way to change the mindset of that community and the values of that community than to take something that is close to Christmas? I mean, if
The
you can even
Christmas
call it
story
close,
came
it
from the
uses
movie.
the themes of Christmas, and you bring that in and you subtly infiltrate the values of the community. So maybe people would say, well, did the Virgin Mary, would she have worn some kind of
fishnet stockings.
yeah, I mean, I struggle even to say it,
I know.
but of course not, right? But now we have this influence from pop culture, and it's a sort of funny movie. I don't know. The older I get, the less funny I think it is. you know, now that I know about the New World Order, everything is ruined for me.
Yeah, I know. That's it.
But this is
Yeah.
like who brought that in? Well, it was some big funder, and these ideas, they percolate from above, and they're brought in to subtly change the mores of the people and prime them for the globalist innovations that are just around the corner. You know, I mean, I was looking on Chickasha's website, their Visit Chickasha yesterday, and now they have a Christmas in July festival. I don't know if they always had that,
Interesting.
or if that is just an extension of the branding that has been developed around the whole Christmas celebration, and that theme. But, you know, if that festival came, into existence after the leg lamp, which that would be my hunch, but I don't know. uh, you know, that is a perfect example of how you change the mores of the people. So
Yeah.
instead of Christmas being a solemn and reverent and beautiful celebration that is, that's oriented toward God, now it's a moneymaker, and it's a big fun festival. And we're back to, the Roman Empire bread and circuses. But, the people, the funders who contribute to the erection of, with an, the erection of that statue, no pun intended. Sorry, it's early, and I have lots of coffee in the morning. I'm sure that they had a say in how the statue would work, how the development would work, and
Oh
I
yeah,
think,
he who has the gold makes the rules.
yeah, and I mean, then what do the people do? Well, they, their desperation and their naivete kicks in, and pretty soon they don't mind the, you know, the decay of what should be a reverent celebration, because, oh, those tourist dollars are coming in.
Yeah, and then money, which is the love of which is the root of all evil.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can look at another example is Sepulpa. They have the Christmas shoot, and they're downtown, which looks like almost every other small town downtown. uh, they have I guess the Route 66 Foundation, or something similar.
Yes, there is a
They've pumped tons of money into this Christmas celebration where they decorate the downtown with all sorts of little themes that you can walk through, and it's cute. It's fun. I went for the first time with my kiddos, and it was neat. But walking around, I looked at it and I said, these designs, the decoration, the concept, this did not come from the people of Sepulpa. This came from big money that is interested in what Route 66 preservation, which, brings with it the need for these public-private partnerships that in effect like silence the voice of the people, because the stakeholders, rather than voters and constituents, they make the decisions.
So let's just say, for people who don't know what a public-private partnership is. So public being the state, so state tax dollars go into whatever this is, but then they're met on the other side by private money. So a public-private partnership, there's some tax holder stake in it, but it depends on how much the original business puts in. And you can't go to a business and say, well, we don't want you taking tax dollars. It doesn't do any good. There's no way to get a shoehorn in between the tax dollars that are going and the private organization, industry, whatever that is. It's too hard then at that point to get any of your elected representatives to do much about that if you find it objectionable in any way. which is, again, goes back to the green agenda. That's the biggest, I was going to say the biggest problem, but I know, Michael, you would fight me to the death over that statement. Because there are like 12 biggest problems with green energy. but one of the biggest is that usually they're public-private partnerships, and you literally, the taxpayer gets shoehorned out of that arrangement and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the public purse, funded by lots of little guys who contribute, their annual dues, which don't amount to much if you consider them on an individual basis. I mean, they hurt when they're taken out of our monthly budget, but if a politician is looking at what Julianne has contributed versus Corporation X, and Corporation X being, the member of the public-private partnership, and I'm just one body in this mass of taxpayers. Who is my politician going to listen to when it comes time for making real policy decisions? He's not going to listen to the constituents because, how am I going to fund his re-election? But Corporation X and the businessmen and women on that are associated with it, they have much capital that could be deployed, and that's a word that they use. It's a military term. They could be deployed to reelect, whatever official is using the coercive power of the state to do the bidding of the corporate interests. So, anytime you have this public-private partnership, that model is just giving away representation. It is shutting taxpayers out. It's giving corporate interests everything. And pretty soon, we are not going to have a government that responds to us at all. I mean, right now it's not responding to us very well, but at least there's still the public myth that they ought to respond to us. But
well, it's interesting because they're propagandizing us and moving toward us responding to them.
Yes.
Not them responding to us. And Julia is watching this morning, and she just hit it on the head. She said, we're being plugged into the Borg.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty much hit the nail on the head, I think.
Yeah. I was going to try to make a joke from the movie A Christmas Story about the soft glow coming from the window, when you
the soft glow of sex coming from the window. Yeah.
I know, but that's exactly what it is. And, just to keep going on this tourism topic, how do you change the mind of small town America? Well, there's part of this, manipulation of symbols, Christmas symbols in this instance, but there's also the development of the tourist industry itself. So if you have a cohesive small town community, and they have the same sorts of values, and let's say that those values are like, hard work and freedom or whatever, we can pick some stock values. Say you want to nudge those toward sustainability and equity and resilience. How do you do that? Well, you shift the economy to one that caters to the needs of outsiders. So you try to, you build up whole industries that support the local economy, so they argue, but they do so by pandering to people from many other locations who have different tastes and preferences. So, if you look at like the Smart Growth America website, then it talks all about tourism as, a driver of sustainable development. And it can be tourism that's based on like natural attractions, say you have a big park, or some hiking amenities and things like that, or it could be a culture-based tourism. So maybe there's a historic site that people might want to come visit. It could be sports based, where you build a large stadium that's supposed to attract different types of shows and sporting events. And all of those models are designed to bring new people in and create whole industries around those outsiders. So you have the small locals who like hard work and freedom and self-sufficiency, and they're told, well, you're not going to get these outsiders coming in unless you adopt sustainable business practices, and unless you use recycled goods in all of your supply chains, because the outsiders who are coming from the big cities or from progressive places, they care about this, and they're not going to visit your little dumpy town unless you adopt their values. So it really is a pretty sinister way of shaping the people to be receptive to the Green New Deal.
I
Yeah.
never. Sorry, go ahead,
Well,
Michael.
anyway, I just wanted to drill down for a second, Julianne, on, we use that term globalism or globalist, and then we're talking about economic development. But I want people to realize, when you look at these small communities and they have all these types of projects, or, they're using these buzzwords, they sound good, they sell all this, they're not actually incentivizing mom and pop to go
Right.
open businesses. There's no tax incentives there. There's no regulatory incentives. It's all that global, that it's being front run by the people in the town that actually already have money and know what's going to be happening 6 months or a year from now. Those are the people that are going to benefit in those small towns. Those are the people that's going to build a restaurant or whatever it may be. It's not going to be your mom and pop everyday person that is the heartbeat of that town. It's going to be these people who are in that public-private kind of arrangement. They're going to be the beneficiaries in all these cases.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if I have to sort of tread carefully here, because so I'm going to just sort of speak in generalities. But I think if you look at your small town's development, or even, I mean, you can see it pretty clearly in Tulsa. You can test this generality to see if it holds true in the
Tulsa
specific
and
sort of,
Oklahoma City. Don't forget, Oklahoma City is a big
yeah.
city.
I
Julianne,
mean,
it's a big league city.
oh yeah, and that wonderful skyscraper, right? Everyone thinks it's goofy. Well, everyone wonders, why on earth is that happening here? Why is it happening here? Well, there's the Satanic Agenda behind it. And then, there's this need to attract outsiders and change the place. And I mean, that's the simplest explanation. But yeah, I mean, when you look at who's doing the revitalization, like who owns the shops, who owns the restaurants, they are, entrepreneurs and policy innovators that have been selected by these crony capitalists who are loyal to this long-term agenda. And, and they're most likely not starting even with their own money. They are, front facing pawns that bring in the new whatever restaurant it is, whether it's a new ramen noodle bar, or maybe it's an axe throwing venue. Every small town has one of these now, and it's not like those let's say late 20, 30 somethings have all of the money and just had the idea to start creating new little cookie shops. No, this is all from a template. It's developed from the top down. people are picked who look like they would, you know, maybe come up with that idea for themselves, or they look kind of snazzy, and people are like, oh yeah, look, this guy, he went to this college and has these great ideas, and he's gonna start an axe throwing bar. No, these people have been picked through leadership institutes and fraternities and different kinds of, family connections. And then the big funders have said, hey, you want to start an axe throwing bar? I'm going to give you some startup capital, and let's see what you do with it. Well, in that way, those big funders control all of the little pop-up shops and different revitalization efforts that are going in to, support the new leg lamp industry. But just like Michael says, like, these are not genuine entrepreneurs, like mom and pop shops that have, built up businesses over decades.
And sometimes there are people, and I think this is really important too, and something that goes back to something you said earlier. Many of them have been served on state boards before, have been involved in some way, because they've been to a leadership institute. They've been handpicked, like you said, by leadership, and they've been in and out of government, and they know how government works and where they can get funding. And so it's like you said, it's even more egregious, because then the people in the town know who these people are.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're our friends because they're creating blah, blah, blah. Well, how much is your friend benefiting from this? How little do you get to benefit from this? Because you weren't in government previously, so you don't have insider information. So I think what you said earlier is absolutely right, dead straight on. And people have got to, you talked about people being naive and saying, oh, well, our city council has our best interests in mind. And, oh no, he's been a member of this community for years, and he served on this task force, and he was on this commission, and he's fine. And people stop looking at what they're doing. So they don't go to city council meetings. They don't go to economic LEDA meetings. The LEDA, every town who has economic development has some kind of a LEDA meeting, and you can go to that, which is an economic development meeting, and find out what's going on. So instead of just closing off your noggin and not thinking about what's happening, what is, and how is your town being changed? How is the tenor of the town, the morals of the town being changed? Who benefits from this? People have got to start asking these questions.
Yeah, they really do. And the people who are behind the policies themselves, who are the pawns, so to speak. I mean, they need to ask the same questions, because I think, most of the time they don't know themselves what's going on. So you have, like, the people who are actually implementing these agendas, maybe the axe throwing bar proprietor. He might not know what on earth he's involved in, I mean, and so finding out what he's involved in could be a very difficult process. That is, if you care about freedom and truth. Now, if you just, if you really just care about power and crony networks, then maybe you say, oh yeah, well, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there are, people who have been brought into this agenda and its implementation sort of innocently, and it's going to be a hard realization. And I think that that's hard for, neighbors to point out to neighbors, hey, you're involved in something that is actually going to lead to the enslavement of this country, So I just want to acknowledge that difficulty. But then there are people who are higher up, and I'm pretty sure that they are well aware of what's going on and they fully support it because, like you say, they're going to get kickbacks, and they believe that this new world order is coming, and so they want to be on the receiving end of it. And so that's just something that the people of Oklahoma are going to have to wrestle with and figure out, like, how are we going to deal with the naive implementers of this policy, and then the those who are implementing it, who are in the know and just simply don't care about the principles on which this nation was based, and they don't care about the mom and pop shop that's going to close. They don't care about representative government. So we're going to have to figure out how to deal with them. But in the meantime, I would say, people need to start tracing the money. And if you've tried to do that, that's why one reason I want to speak in sort of generalities, when I say that there are these crony networks, because, if you start to trace the money, it is very difficult to figure out where it's all going once you have public-private partnerships and nonprofit organizations involved.
So hold on. Let's hold on 1 second and look at what Shanahan said, because she's exactly talking about what we're talking about. This hits so close to home. OKC Alliance for Economic Development is a private entity that is trying to buy our 135-year-old farmland in Canadian County to bring in 7,500 plus jobs for Yukon, El Reno, and Mustang, yet it will be OKC annexed. This alliance has former mayors, Thunder owners, OK City, Shanna. This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is
100% what we're talking about. So let's just, since Shanna has got this, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Since she's got such an excellent point, and this is exactly what we were talking about. How can you, let's put it back up here again. What can you tell her to do? How can you get this community? I mean, what are some things that you can say that might be able to give her some ideas of how she can help herself here and her neighbors?
Well, I mean, I think you have to start with the people in the small towns that are at risk here, because, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and even, let's say, like Edmond and some of the, smaller but still large cities in Oklahoma, I hate to say this, but I've sort of given up on them, on any real reform, say, coming from, Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So I think you have to
Well,
start.
there's too much money and power
Too much
involved.
money and power, and the interests are too deeply entrenched,
Yeah.
and they've already been culturally and morally, ideologically adjusted much farther than the rural areas and small town areas. So I would say you have to start with El Reno, Yukon, Mustang, and you have to get the people to understand what this means for their city. So, the promise of 7,500 jobs is a fleeting promise. I mean, all sorts of infrastructure development is going to be based on the promise of future growth. It's just like
it is just that, Julian. It's a promise. You don't know. They don't know. They always are going to project the biggest outcome out there to get your mind all wrapped up in it. But they don't say, well, it only could end up being like 750 or 75. I mean, they're not going to tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like this massive amusement park that they're planning in Veneta, right?
Right.
And how many hundreds of thousands of acres or something like, I mean, it was a huge number of acres that they were going to use for this Heartland amusement park. And so the people in Veneta were told, we're going to build this and they're going to come. and you're not going to be prepared. And it's going to be the end of Veneta if, if we have all of these visitors coming in and we don't have smart roads to deal with them, if we don't have a service industry ready to serve them, if we don't have all of these things. So the promise of future development is that is the basis of many different municipal obligations that are going to hurt the people of those small towns, because they are going to be forced to pay for them, to deal with the, the rezoning that occurs when you have a new employer coming in or a new amusement. And it's not going to just be one farm here or there. Like these metropolitan areas, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, they're going to keep expanding because we're moving to a mega region model. And everyone is supposed to come under the governance structure of a large city. So these small towns, we're going to have like little developments like Chickasha, where you develop some pride in Chickasha or any small town. And that's going to last just for a bit. I mean, how long does a tourist town really stay nice, and attractive? It's not for very long because tourists come in and trash the place, right? So after the initial euphoric stage, there's going to be decay and there's going to be blight. And what happens then? Well, then you have Oklahoma City or Tulsa or whatever the biggest power player close by. They're going to come in and they're going to say, we're going to help you again, and we're going to do it by just getting rid of your town charter or city government, and we're going to bring you under our regional governance group. And I can tell you from looking at cities all over the US, all over the world, it is the same template. What are they going to do? They're going to say, we're going to focus on equity, resilience, sustainability, innovation, and we are going to see the rise of the corporate charter city replace any of these small towns. And the rural areas are going to be, they're going to be handed over to land trusts and corporate governance, and the farmers are going to be moved off, and people are going to be pushed into the large metropolitan areas and sort of forced to reskill themselves in order to participate in that urbanized economy. So I would say that maybe from my perspective, the best thing that someone facing this situation can do is educate the small town people who don't want to be forced into Oklahoma City. You've got to educate them about the real intent of these policies. And you have to show them that these projections of future development are just like fiat money and derivatives and promises of, some future utopia, but they're not really going to work. Now, the big speculators, the market speculators, they can make lots of money developing roads for Veneta. Does Veneta really need a new road? Are the visitors really going to come? Who knows? But with scare tactics, then you have a lot of, and the cronyism and the social pressure of, wanting to have prosperity for all, it's going to suck in gullible people. And so our best defense is to not be gullible, to understand the dynamic. It's a template. It's happening everywhere. Then we can defend ourselves.
So Shanna, I would admonish you to, when all of our channels store the videos, and I'm going to make some clips from this, particularly one around there, and then one at about 39 minutes where we talked about the specifics of what's happening in the circular way it works. Share those little clips with people that are around you. And I will say this, one of the really great things about country folk that I think is predominantly still there is that idea of it, we can do it, we can do this. And out where I live, out in eastern Oklahoma County and Lincoln County and Pottawatomie County out here, we have people coming in wanting to create wind farms. And people are learning about how destructive these wind turbines are, how destructive they are to peace and quiet, to animals, to land, to you can't do anything with them. They don't compost. They're supposed to be green, but you can't compost or recycle any of this crap that makes them. And people are getting fed up with it. They're understanding that they're being fed a line of BS, and they're educating themselves, and they're starting to go after this stuff together as a group. They're going to county commissioner meetings, because Shanna, what you have to understand happens, as Julianne said, so much of this stuff gets done because of contacts. Well, I know this person, so we'll just do this little deal under here. Or they'll go to the city council and they'll do it in a, they'll figure out some way to be able to talk about this in the private section of the meeting. They'll pull it out and make it an executive session, so you can't get to the information. So you have to get people together, and you have to go at this head on. You have to go to the city council meetings. You have to go to the county commissioner meetings. You have to go to all of these places that ostensibly represent you and complain. So she says, unfortunately, Banner, I know where that is a 3-mile unannexed line. Several families have been swayed by the green money. No one wants it, but nobody wants to fight it. Just about 3 families. Well, that sucks. And it's sad because I see that happening too as well. And I think the only thing that you have in your favor is get those 3 families to maybe, call out some of the other families. We're in a war. We really are. I don't think people understand this. We're in a war for our property. We're in a war for our bodies. We're in a war for our autonomy on even the smallest scale. And if people absolutely get people involved in whatever way you can to make this thing and push back. I wish we had more attorneys, but there are some attorneys out there that can help with this. We've got to develop more connections with attorneys who are willing to donate their time to these kinds of things to push back, because unfortunately we've allowed the court system. People think judges and whatever, retain. They don't pay any attention to who these people are. They don't know whether they or not they believe in tyranny or whether or not they believe in personal autonomy. They don't know. They just check the boxes. And so what we have today is a situation in which, as you said, Julianne, these groups come together. They're all groomed for this stuff, and they just literally push the little people, the peons, the what have they been called? What have we been called? Useless eaters. They just push us out for these other things. She says, looks like they're going to C.E. Page Airport to eminent domain our land as our 320 acres, because it will be government, not the private entity.
Yeah. So see, that's why you have to have this public-private partnership, because you have to have the
force of the government
enforcement power to take your land, to take your tax dollars, to imprison your body. So that's why these corporations are working so closely with the government, because they, the people do still believe in, the authority of the state. And, and it has enforcement power that corporations right now don't have. But what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years is that the government is just going to sort of evaporate or dissolve into these corporate structures, so that we have, like what I mentioned, these corporate charter towns. And, I would say, I mean, one thing that if I had more time, I would love to do this. I would love to make a template or some sort of visual display that shows all of the little towns in Oklahoma. I mean, you could do it for the large cities too. You could just pick whichever issue you wanted to treat. And I would love to show the plagiarism, the copycatism that goes on on a big display board, so that when you have your Chamber of Commerce and your developers saying, we're going to have an innovative development here that's going to attract tons of business, and we're going to set ourselves up as, a first class city, or, we're not going to be a flyover city anymore. I would love to have a visual where you have the marketing for every single little town that's following the same model. Because so the people in Mustang, Yukon, El Reno, you have to know this is the same thing that's happened in Pawhuska, in McAllister, in any sort of city in Oklahoma, small town or city. And there are really two different sort of approaches for the larger cities and then for the small towns and rural areas. It's both strategies are part of Agenda 21 and the reset and the 30 by 30 land grab. It's just two different approaches, one tailored for existing metro areas and one for the small town community, but it's the same pattern everywhere. So, if you want to know what your city is going to look like, find a place in our state or in another state that has already undergone that process. And you're going to see that when you bring in these giant employers with 7,500 jobs or whatever, they also bring with them an entire campus model that includes workforce housing, also known as affordable housing. These are gulags, right? And employee care centers. This is where your employer controls your health care. They're going to bring with them transportation innovation and, mobility options. And, in Tulsa, we have the little scooters that you can zoom around, while they accurately pinpoint your GPS, link to your credit card, link to your social credit score, but find other cities that are doing the same thing and show the people where you are, this is what it's going to look like. And look, we're actually going to be no different than the city that did it 5 years prior to us. And so let's think about this. We're claiming that this investment, which requires us to be annexed by Oklahoma City, or however the argument goes.
Right.
We're claiming that this is going to be a lifeline for our small communities, and it's going to set us apart. But how well does that argument work when every single other town is doing the same thing? So like, you go to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, like, it's downtown. Sure, it's cute. I mean, I've gone there. It looks the same as Jenks, as, Sepulpa, as Fort Smith, Arkansas, where I'm from. They all have the same sorts of development. So tell me how this is going to really set us apart as a community. It's not going to.
Wow, that's a really good point.
And our resources are going to evaporate. I mean, we're headed for economic collapse. Like, this is where Michael could weigh in, So,
Don't get him started again.
Yeah.
Oh, my
yes, we're
Lord.
going to have to choose whether or not we're on our social credits, since we won't have money. whether we're going to go visit a leg lamp or a blue whale of Catoosa. And, in that downward spiral, I mean, people are going to stop going to any of those little places, right? Because they're not going to have any money. But as things become more cutthroat, what are we going to do to lure employers to our area? We're going to keep giving concessions, and pretty soon everyone's going to have to cough up their land. Every single person, you're going to have to donate it to the pot to do what? To lure the employers to your area for salvation. That's really where it's going. Look at these huge campuses and the huge corporate enterprises where, affordable housing, then they're going to have schools that are on the campus, and they're going to train the employees' children to work at the company store. That's exactly where it's going.
Wow.
And so I think maybe if you partner with people, who from different cities, there's the line in scripture, a prophet is without honor in his own town, right? So I think for people who are desperate for lifelines and hope, maybe they just have given up on their own ability and the ability of their town to solve these problems by themselves. So they think it's hopeless, or they think that people in their own towns have a skewed perspective, whatever. I say, bring other people in, from all of these little cities, from Luther, from, Guyman, Guthrie, wherever, and say, here's how it's happening in our town. And pretty soon you have people that are saying, that's exactly what they told us. Oh, we heard this too. And common sense, I would hope, would kick in and say, well, this is weird. It's weird that everyone is saying the same thing and being sold the same package of innovation and development.
Well, and I wanted to say too, what you're talking about, I know people say, oh, well, I just don't see that. People just don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But you look, didn't we just in Oklahoma City have another tax because we needed to build the Thunder yet another place because the original place wasn't good enough for them anymore. But then we had to build the Cox Business Center because the Cox Business Center was going to bring in all these people and all these businesses. But now it's not good enough. Now we have to demolish it and put something else in. Guys, it's all for the benefit of the people holding the dollars who do this. They don't give a rat's butt about you or economic development or anything else. It's only a way for them to exchange dollars with their other, I got a lot of dollars people. It's not about you. That's the thing that I think people have got to quit thinking there's some kind of anybody in big business or government has this philanthropic heart. Oh, we're just here to help you. BS. They are not. Wake up. They're here to make money, and they're here to make money for themselves off of your back. So wake up.
Yeah. I mean, just look, can the average family afford to go to an Oklahoma City Thunder game?
I can't. Well, I'm not going to do it anyway.
No,
I can't imagine being in a place with that many other human beings. I don't like human beings that well.
No, but even if you did, let's say that you just, you were one of the naive masses, Jenny, and you just loved being affirmed in your views and reflecting the group values. You love being a part of the community. Let's just imagine it and say you wanted to go participate in one of these games, say you want to go to a Major League Baseball game. Could you afford it? No. I mean, these venues, they're all being set up to cater to corporate clients. Who can go visit these exotic places that are supposed to revive small towns and mid-sized towns and Midwest towns and however they are characterized? Only people on the company dime can enjoy these experiences. That shows you we are moving toward a, you know, a corporate controlled
Ugh.
way of life, like company
Well,
stores.
and then I'm gonna get on to something Michael always gets on. Michael, how many people pay for these things with their credit card?
Everybody.
So how much credit card debt did you talk about the other day?
What do we got? We got a trillion, like a trillion 140. And so
Okay. So what happens when you can't pay your credit card bill? Who owns you? If you owe money to people, who owns you?
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's the whole system. We can go into that. But I do want to give a little story here real quick to validate several of the things you just said about the small town revitalization, the small town, even the gulags. I can literally personally relate to that. So I grew up in Guyman, and Guyman was an awesome little farm town. I mean, it was vibrant. You know, downtown was packed, mom and pop shops. You know, there was 4 or 5 different grocery stores. You know, the whole 9 yards. So in the late 90-ish, early 2000s, Seaboard Farms came in.
Oh, yeah.
Walmart came in.
Yep.
All the other shops went out of business. Seaboard Farm was basically the main employer of the town. I'm sure the town gave all kinds of concessions,
Economic
to bring in this big
incentives.
employer. They were going to put in, a little housing district, for migrant people or, the excess people. We literally, I mean, it completely ruined the town, the whole the farm, the hog farm industry all around there. I mean, the whole thing is just insane now. All those businesses are gone. All the mom and pop is gone. The only thing that's left is literally Walmart and Seaboard.
Yeah.
When I was there, I worked with the guy who had the contract. We literally cleaned all those houses and mobile homes that Seaboard brought in. You want to talk about gulag? You want to talk about the worst place? I mean, literally, my friend that I worked for literally sold his company because it was so bad going in there and cleaning up all that stuff. It was the most unbelievable thing. I mean, I can't imagine how people could even live in these places. But, it was all promoted by the city, the Chamber of Commerce. Oh, this is so great. They're bringing in all this stuff. They're going to do all this stuff. So now you fast forward, 20 years. I mean, it's a total just devastation up there. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And that is the pattern that you see over and over again. I'm from Fort Smith, Arkansas, and I mean, that it was the second largest city in Arkansas when I was a kid. And, we had, like, I can remember there was a fancy store called the Boston store. It was sort of like, if you've been to Tulsa, it was like a Miss Jackson's, like they had like high-end designer clothes. And my mom used to like to go look at their china and crystal, and dream about it. Yeah. So
back in the old days when people cared about nice things.
Yeah. And we were not, I mean, I had a very modest upbringing. So she wasn't hoity-toity, but there were places that could, stay in business, catering to sort of high-end tastes, because the city, as a whole, the populace could support that industry. And this was an independent place. Now there is nothing. And, Walmart came into, its headquarters are up in Northwest Arkansas, and several big, Fort Smith was a blue collar town. So you could have a fancy shop like this and in a blue collar manufacturing town. And now those companies have left. And when I go back to Fort Smith, which is a couple of times a year, it is desolate. And the schools are, they're failing. I think it's something like 75% of students, and I'm underestimating there, are on free and reduced lunches in the public schools. That entire city is going to feed into a few new multinational firms that are coming in and building up these little smart, housing developments to track and trace every bit of human behavior and to control these people's lives. And it's depressing to go back. And I bring my kids and they're like, what? You grew up here? This place is a dump. And so I tell them, hey, Tulsa is right there.
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to, we have to figure out how to, attack this problem on our own, because it's not just Fort Smith that
So
is in town.
Shayna says too, yes, El Reno was swooned by getting federal funding to help bring in this mega industrial complex. They were given 48 hours to complete the paperwork to get the money. They jumped at it to get money. And you see it over and over and over again. They want money and they make excuses all the time. Well, it's our money. The federal government have our money. You've proven to us over and over again, Michael, it's not even our money. They just print it. So that whole line is a big fat lie, and I'm totally sick of it. No, it's not our money. They make it up to do with whatever they want, and we've got to be smarter than this. We have to be smarter than this. This is what Shayna should have been on the program with you, because I mean, it's so many towns are going through this. So many towns are going through this. And it all comes down to, well, we don't have that kind of tax base. We need to have this federal grant or this, whatever grant. And in some cases, it's not the end of the world. But in a lot of cases, like, for example, when they're doing it to kind of improve the water supply because or the water infrastructure, because so many small towns have let their water infrastructure, for example, go to pot. And there have been a lot of, we had to do that in Luther, get some state grants in order to be able to build our water infrastructure up. You have to do that. That's just one of those things. But not to bring in a leg lamp, or not to bring in a blue whale, or not to, bring in something with 7,500 jobs. So we're going to have to get off of here in just a minute. But I want to close it out, because this is probably, to me, I don't know about you guys, but to me, I think this was the most informative, best show we've done, probably even since the solar panel discussion, because this is right under people's noses. The people who are participating in this, you think they're your friends. They're members of the community. They've been around for forever. They're not. Wake up, smell the coffee before you lose your property. And the people who you think are just fine are going to help you lose it. It's like Shayna. I'm sure she knows some people, around, and she has neighbors who are like, well, I don't really want to bother with it. If they're not for you, they're against you. Just saying. Well, Julianne, this has been, again, I think this has been, don't you think, Michael, this was an amazing show?
Uh-huh.
Well, we need to double down on this, because I know there are so many people out there who are coming to grips with this in their own towns. And I do think if there was Whitney Mullica and I don't know if she's on this morning or not, but we were talking about the fact that we needed to get a group of people together who are fighting these things and put one giant group together.
Yeah.
Where maybe that giant group of all of these little people who are fighting all these little battles could, maybe make a bigger stink if they just had the capital of becoming together. Because I feel so bad for people like Shayna who are like, I just want to fight this, but nobody around me will help. We've got to help these people, because she's on the right side of it. Losing through a 320 acre farm because they're just going to take it away from you because they want something else. It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. And people have to realize, like, this, it is coming to you, whether you see it now or not. It is coming. And, they're going to use eminent domain to take your land they're going to use eminent domain, not just for land, but for all sorts of resources that need to serve the community, right? And then it's going to, that power that is, sort of vested in the government right now is going to be transferred to, let's just say, to Amazon. And what sway do you as an individual or your small town as an individual community, what sway does it have with a giant profit-seeking firm
non-governmental entity
like Amazon? You have nothing. And if we don't do exactly what you're talking about doing, Jenny, then our kids are going to work at the Amazon gulag.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to go into how they're going to work there. It's because the robots are going to do the dignified work, and our kids are going to be relegated to something much more sinister. So it is imperative that people join forces and fight this.
Amen, girlfriend. Well, we'll work on the next day to get you on, and we'll try to even talk a little bit more even about this. But I sure do. I mean, even though I hate your situation. Oh, Shayna, our friend Julia C is telling you, because I have to navigate Rumble on one screen and then everything else on the other. So you're not seeing what she's saying. But you need to reach out to Julia C, who's in Yukon. She's in your area. And Julia, she's a fighter, man. She'll get you. So if you don't know how to hook up with her, send me an email at my email address, jenny@rope2.org, and I'll get you guys together. So please do that. Again, thank you for being with us today, Julianne. If you've got a little time to hang out in the waiting room before you go, we'll see what we can do to schedule you up again. But for now, I'm going to let you go. And then, but thank you. You're always just absolutely so immensely instructive. You know so much. And that clip that I'm going to do at 39 minutes was the best explanation I've ever heard. You just wrapped that up like a Christmas present, put a little bow on it. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Shayna says she's hooked up with you in some groups on Facebook. So find her, Julia, find her. Okay. So we'll talk to you later, Julianne, and God bless. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Michael.
All righty. Bye-bye. Dang, that was good. She is amazing.
Yeah, she really is. And I want to just make one little point. She mentioned all the eminent domain and how they can just take, and they're going to, at some point, they're going to really flex and do whatever. But on the equivalent to that in the financial world is a bail-in. And let me just tell you, you have your 401ks, you got your money in a bank, you got all this stuff. If you don't have it in your own possession, it's not yours. At any given point, if they want to just pull the trigger and say, hey, this debt is too high, we're going to have to cash in your pension. We're going to have to cash in your IRAs. We're going to have to cash in your 401k. We're going to have to take all the money in your bank account. They can do it because the way the system is legally run, those assets are not yours. On paper, they look good. That looks like you're rich. It looks like you have all this. You don't have those in your possession. And if they want to bail in, they're going to take it, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, I'm curious to know, though, cash really isn't worth anything either. It's not even, I don't even think well, most of our coinage doesn't even means nothing.
Yeah, but cash still has a person-to-person value. They're not going to just completely until they crash the entire financial system, come out with something new, that could be 50 years from now. They're going to just continue to inflate that cash. So it's not worth as much. The purchasing power of it is not worth as much. But if you have cash, okay, let's say all the banks, all that stuff gets bailed in, and you need to go buy something for $1,000. You don't have access to your bank account, to your credit cards, anything. If you had cash, you could still go at least make some type of trade in some capacity.
Got
So
it.
cash does give you a little bit of ability to still function. And I think everyone should have, have cash everything out, but you should have some cash on hand at all times, besides gold and silver and some things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if they want to take it, if it's not in your possession, if it's in a bank, they can take it.
Yeah. Well, yay. So excited. Well, honestly, Michael, thank you for being here with me again today. And I just think that we had a great show.
Yeah.
I was kind of a little sad that there weren't more people on today, but because I think they missed a really great live show. And Shayna, thank you for being on with us today and watching, because you became a part of the program with your poor, sad story, because that's so much of what's going on. So thank you for speaking out about that and letting other people know, what you're up against and what you're fighting, and let us know how we can help you, because we'd certainly like to do that. So everybody, thank you for being on with us today. We really do appreciate that. We will have a rope replay coming up for this week, which on Friday, which I've forgotten what it is, but tune in. It'll be a surprise.
Janelle Shellum with the books.
Oh, thank you. You're the best. Thank you. It is Janelle Shellum with the books. You're exactly right. So as we're getting ready to start school, you want to know what's in your kids' library. So tune in on Friday if you haven't seen that already, and ask other people to join so that they can see what's on. Janelle's done some really great research on that. So thanks, Michael. All right. Anything else before we sign off?
That's it.
All right. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you again next Wednesday live. Thanks.
Thanks.